This is the card that I'm going to show you how to make today. I refer to it as a mini box pop-up card. It folds flat, fits into a standard envelope, and the really cute part of this is once you open it, you see this. This particular card, before I mail it, I will probably stamp and punch additional flower images to put on the back of that. A fun thing about this is that it is readily adaptable to just about any season, holiday, birthdays, whatever. I'm currently working on one that I'm going to send to my grandchildren. Halloween, and it opens up, and this is what they will see when they open it up. This one was a very simple one to do. The one with the flowers was considerably more intensive for labor with all the stamping and punching that went into it. So let's get started on this. I'm not going to take your time by showing you the inking and assembly that I did on the basic card base. You all know how to do that. The card base is a piece of cardstock that is 5.5 by 8.5 and folded in half so that it opens this way, or you could open it this way also. I also used 3 mats on this for the front and 2 interior mats. They were each cut 5.25 by 4. I did run these through embossing folders and sponge the edges of them. The card base itself, I used a textured stamp and stamped just around the edges of it because, of course, you don't see the interior portion under the mats. Now, for the pop-up mechanism, you need 3 pieces. One is the box itself. That is cut 6 3/8 by 2 5/8 inches. And I'll work you through the scoring on that one. Then you also have 2 tabs for the interior of the box. They are cut 2 3/8 inch by 1 inch. You score 3/8 of an inch on each end of them and fold them in half. Well, let's go ahead and get started on the box portion of it. What you'll need to do is, after you've cut your 6 3/8 by 2 5/8 inch piece, you'll need to start scoring. Putting the 6 3/8 inch along the guideline, put it on 6 inches, score, slide it over to 4.5 inches, score to 3 inches, score, and to 1.5 inches, and score. Next thing is, with the 3/8 inch tab put at the bottom end of it, put your paper to the 1.5 inch mark, score. And at this point, you're going to need to start to do a little bit of cutting. What you're going to do is this section here and here and here, they will be cut off. Some of it I do with scissors, and some I do with a trimmer. Now this next cut I do like to make with the trimmer because I want to have this as even as possible. Put your paper to the 1.5 inch mark. Take your cutting blade, and I just start in the middle to get a good punch. Then I'll go up to the 1.5 inch mark there and down to the 4.5 inch mark there. And take that out. The next part that you will need to do, again, in order to keep a real straight line for cutting, I draw a diagonal there and there. Okay, one point is on the point here. The other end of the diagonal is where the intersection of the score lines is there. And again, the other end of this diagonal is at the score line that runs across. And I now cut this off. Now, this is the piece that you end up with. Go ahead and fold and burnish all of your score lines on this. When you're burnishing the score lines, especially if you have a very crisp paper, you're going to have better luck if you score lightly a couple of times instead of a very strong burnishing one time, because you don't want to crack the paper at the score lines. Okay, now one more thing that I do on this particular card, this intersection right here, this is the bottom part of the box, and this gets a lot of work here. It folds and unfolds multiple times. There's a lot of stress on that. So what I do is I just put a piece of Scotch tape on what will be the inside of the box. All right, next thing is to attach the tab to the box, to the other end of the box. And you can use a strong adhesive, whatever you prefer, tape, glue, whatever. I really like using glue because I feel it gives me a little bit extra time to correct any mistakes that I may have made on this. Now what you're looking at is the box here. When it's in the card, it will be set in this way with the little rabbit ear tabs attached at the front edge of it. All right, now we need to work on the insert, the two inserts that will go in. And fold them in half lengthwise this way. And the reason that I just fold instead of scoring is that it's an odd measurement. I mean, if you want to figure out what the 16th inch mark is to fold at the middle of it, go ahead and do that. This is just easier for me. Now you have that scored, folded in half, and go ahead and on each end of the tab, score at 3/8 of an inch. After you have folded and scored the insert tabs, what you will have are two pieces that you will fold to look like this. When you take your box with the rabbit ears pointing towards you and fold it, the seam of the box is actually going to be the very front of it. Take this piece and use glue or strong tape adhesive and put the tab in so that the cut edge of it is snug against the folded side edge of the box. And then glue or tape the other side in again so that the cut edge of that tab is against the side fold of the box. Give it enough time to start setting up a little bit. And then your other tab, the one that looks like this, put some glue on the back side of it and line it up so that the cut edge is at the side of the box. A little bit of fumbling here to get it in place to hold correctly. And once that sets up a little bit, put some glue on the back edge of that side seam and put the other side of the tab in there. Now, advantages and disadvantages both to using glue and tape. The glue, of course, gives you a little bit more time to get everything lined up and exactly where you want it. However, it also does take a little bit more time for it to dry. The tape, it dries instantly, of course, but you need to put it right where you want to have it in the first place. And I seldom can manage to do that. All right, now what you are looking at when you finish putting those inserts in is this, with those little triangular tabs towards the bottom. The seam of the box is what will be the front, and you have this. Now, the next thing that you're going to do is adhere this to the inside of your card base. On this one, like I said before, I just embellished the mats with embossing folders, a little bit of sponging, inking, whatever all. Make sure that when you're working with this, you're well aware of which is the front of the card, top and bottom. Because when you put the little box insert in, first you're going to want to flatten it so that you're looking at it this way. Then you will line it up so that the corner points are up against the mat on each side, and you want to have it as snug to the score line, the center fold of the card, as possible, but not going over it. Otherwise, of course, it's not going to fold. With it lying in there, pick it up, turn it over, put glue on the triangular portion. Again, you can use tape if you want to. If you're using glue, you have to really be careful that you do not get too much glue on it, because it's going to end up gluing parts of the box in place that you don't want to have glued down. Let it set up just a little bit, and then put glue or tape on that other triangular piece. Again, if you're using glue, don't use too much because you don't want it to ooze out. Then fold it over and hold it in place. This is the part that's going to have some of the most stress on it, so you want it adhered well. You don't want it to start coming loose part way through. And you open it and you've got your little box here. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to show you is that I've pre-assembled some of these that I'm going to put on the tabs, but I'm going to show you how I did one of them. I work on a silicone mat, so I don't have to worry about things sticking to it. What I did on the others is that I just put a reasonable amount of glue on the back side of those flowers and started gluing them down into place. Now, you could just very carefully put glue on those. I don't take the time to do that because, like I say, if you've got a silicone mat that you're working with, you don't need to worry about it. It will lift off beautifully from the mat, and you know that you will have everything glued down securely. Now, the trick is to just let it set in place long enough for everything to adhere together, and then carefully lift it off of the mat and turn it upside down so that the glue on the back of it has a chance to dry. And then get the glue wiped up off of your mat so that you're not sticking everything else to it. Assembling the flowers to the inside of the box, there are some things that you have to watch out for. I know from experience that these stems are too long, because if I just attached them glued them that way, and then folded it, the flowers would end up sticking out the edge of the card. So what you need to do on each of these things is kind of audition them a bit. Like this one that goes in the back side. Stick the flowers down there, and well, I know then that I need to have about 1/2 inch cut off the end of the stems, and then that will work. And as I go on and show some of these things as they're, it's just, this part is just picky work. It's not difficult. You just want to make sure that you're attaching it well. This part, you really do need to use glue for, because if you have tape, it's going to show through there when you fold it shut. The exposed tape is going to stick to the other side of it. And now I want to put some on that side of it. Well, I can use longer stems on this one. So I'll just go ahead and put some glue there. It's not quite dry, but I'll go ahead and see. You know, I don't like the looks of that one, so I'm going to go ahead and cut some of the stems off so that they will sit down deeper. This portion of the card assembly is just a matter of trying things in. See if it works. If it works, glue it down. If it doesn't work, lift it out, trim some edges, and see what else happens. Now, this particular one that I put in the middle, I don't really like it there. And I've got enough. And the stems are damp enough now that what I can do is lift them out again, and I'm going to trim them and so that it sits a little bit longer, excuse me, a little bit lower, and put them in. If you have double-sided temporary adhesive tape, that is another good way of trying this. Now, it's looking pretty skimpy right now. See, on this one, I added more greenery and little flowers to it. So, we're just gonna try things out here. Again, cutting the stems off to the length that I think that they need to be. And sticking it in there. Now the tricky part of this is you've got to make sure that all of these that you're gluing in there, that you do not close the card before they are dry. Otherwise, the box is going to stick together and it's just flat out not going to work. part is pretty boring for you guys to look at because in order for me to see what I'm doing, you cannot see very well what I am doing. Now, I just have all of these little bits and pieces that I'm going to add and just figure out what I think is going to be the way to do this. And there's just no, what I'm doing right now is just personal preference on it, trying to decorate it so that it fills in the gaps on it, that gives enough room to be able to see what's in there. All right, now the tricky part comes here. You need to carefully fold your box. And the first couple of times you fold it, you're going to have to check things. Like now I can see starting to fold this, that this flower here sticks out too far. So all I do is trim that off. And now this set of greenery here, I don't like the way that it's fitting in there, and I'm not sure if it's just because it's a little bit too loose or if it was sitting in front of something where it should have been sitting behind it. Okay, now again, I can see as I'm folding it that this flower here is too wide. So I'm taking the edge off of it so it'll be able to fold. And this piece of greenery right here just does not want to work. I need to twist it around a little bit so that it's I have that one sticking just a little bit too far out. So those are things to look for when you are assembling your card. Now, I could tell that the bottom edge of this flower here was hanging up. So I'm going to trim that out. You want to have it looking as full as possible when it's open. And if manipulation of a little bit of it when you're folding it, once it's been folded and closed a number of times, it's going to pop back into place. Now, this one again, right here, I can see that it's hanging up, so I need to trim just a little bit off the bottom edge of that. And now it swings through there. And I can also see that this little piece of greenery here is forcing that one further forward than what I want. So I just trim that out. It's kind of like putting together a bouquet at home. You trim things to shorten them and move them around a little bit, but Thank goodness you don't have to try and fold a bouquet at home. Okay, now we've got this done. And I will put labels on the front and the inside to stamp or write sentiments on. And again, I do not adhere those labels that I put the stamped or written sentiments on until the very end of it. And I do all of the stamping or writing first, and that way if I mess it up I can just replace it without trying to take a card apart to do that. Let me go back to this one here. This was very simple. It was not, the fitting of it worked out beautifully. It's when you have the jagged edges like what the flowers are that you have problems that you have to work around in getting it to fold up right. But it's such a spectacular card. I think that it's well worth the effort put into it. Enjoy.